Chair. We're live on YouTube, so I'll hand the meeting over to you.
Thank you very much. Good morning and welcome to East Devon District Council's Virtual Licensing and Enforcement Subcommittee of the 8th of September 2021. I am Councillor Alan Dent. I would also like to welcome anyone watching the meeting via the live stream. All participants here today are taking part remotely, and as well as being live streamed, the meeting is being recorded. So please bear this in mind throughout, and may I remind you to be careful with your language. May I also remind council members that the Code of Conduct applies throughout this meeting. We also reserve the right to remove and disconnect any participant who is disrupting the meeting by whatever means. As the Licensing and Enforcement Subcommittee is dependent on internet connection and the power supply, in the event of a break in the internet connection or power, please bear with us as we try to reconnect. After 15 minutes, if we're not able to reconnect, we'll consider the meeting adjourned and we'll reconvene at a later date. Please check the committee page on our website for details. All councillors have been sent the agenda for today's meeting. Any members of the public who want to view the agenda can do so by visiting our website, www.eastdevon.gov.uk. It's in the interest of all parties present that the virtual meeting runs in an orderly manner. So please bear the following points in mind throughout. Firstly, make sure that all phones are turned off or on silent, and make sure all microphones are muted when you're not speaking. And that avoids any background noise levels. The meeting is being streamed live on YouTube, but please do not have the YouTube streaming on at the same time, as you'll not be able to hear or be heard. Please keep points short and don't repeat points that have already been made, and don't interrupt other speakers. The chair of the meeting will advise when it is the turn of each of the participants to speak. If needed, we'll have a comfort break at approximately 11 a.m. For the purposes of confirming the meeting is quorate, we will now do a roll call of members present. Alethea, please.
We've got Maddie Chapman. Oh, you're on mute, Maddie.
Sorry. I'm here.
Alan Dent.
Present.
And Tony Woodward.
Present.
Okay, so I can confirm that we are quorate.
Thank you, Alethea. Our first task this morning is to elect a chair and a vice chair for this meeting. Maddie, would you like to?
Yes, I would like to recommend Councillor Alan Dent as chair for this committee meeting.
Okay.
I will second that.
Thank you very much. That makes me chair. Okay, can we now have a proposal for a vice chair, please?
I propose Maddie Chapman as vice chair.
And I'm happy to second that. You all right with that, Maddie?
Thank you.
Okay, so let's go on through the agenda. The agenda item 1, minutes of the previous meeting held on the 11th of August, on pages 3 to 6. Councillors, if anyone has a comment on the last set of minutes held on the 11th of August, please do so by raising your electronic hand. I see no hands. If there are no electronic hands, then I'll take this as an indication that you all agree that the minutes agree with the minutes of the previous meeting. I see no electrons, so that's considered accepted. Agenda item 2, apologies. None that we're aware of. Is that right, Sarah? Yeah.
There's none.
Yeah.
No, there's no apologies.
Agenda item 3, declarations of interest. Declarations of interest will be taken under our agenda item 6. Agenda item 4, matters of urgency. There are no such matters put forward to discuss. Agenda item 5, confidential exempt items. There are no confidential exempt items to discuss. Right, agenda item 6, which is an application for a time-limited premises license for the Sidmouth Jazz and Blues Festival. This is a hearing into an application for a time-limited premises license for the Sidmouth Jazz and Blues Festival. It's proposed to be held at the Ham Recreation Ground in Sidmouth. And the members, just make sure we all know, the members of the subcommittee here today are myself, Councillor Alan Dent, Councillor Maddie Chapman as Vice Chair, and Councillor Tony Woodward. Item 6, declarations of interest. Has any member a personal or prejudicial interest? Please indicate now by raising your electronic hand. None have been raised. There are no interests declared.
Councillor Woodward has raised his
Oh,
hand.
sorry, I missed it.
Sorry, Chair, I should mention I did
Sorry,
receive an email from the Mr. Pemberton on the 9th of August, which I think we all did.
we all did, actually. Yeah, thank you very much. And I think Joe Wibley responded on our behalf.
All right, thank you.
Thank you. Anything else, anybody? Great, thank you. May I introduce the council officers for next? That's Mrs. Westlake, who's the licensing officer with the licensing authority, who will be outlining the application. Mrs. Jenkins, who is the Democratic Service Officer, who will be taking a full note of the hearing. And, well, we can't see him, Mr. Giles Salter, a council solicitor who is acting as legal advisor to the committee. I'd now like to identify who is present and who has already given notice to the council in writing that they wish to address the subcommittee and their representatives. Is the applicant or their representatives here? Could you please confirm your name?
Yep,
That
John
would be
Radford.
Mr. Radford, yes. Do you have any witnesses you wish to call?
Yep, we have the promoter as well here, Mr. Ian Bowden.
Ian Bowden, are you on screen there? Yeah, give us a wave. I can see you. Yeah, thank you. And the applicants, so we got applicant and John, start again. We got Ian Bowden, the applicant, and John Radford, who is the representing agent. Right. The licensing authority has received representations from the following responsible bodies: East Devon District Council Environmental Health Service commented, this service has worked with the applicant to develop the noise management plan as best possible within the confines of the site's location, together with the bringing forward of the end times of the music to 2300 hours. The service does not anticipate any environmental health concerns with the license application, and therefore we have no objections. Interested parties, one local resident, Mr. Pemberton, has given notice they wish to attend this meeting. Mr. Pemberton, you're also representing Mr. Garland Pickard, is that correct?
Yes, that's correct.
Thank you very much. Documents. The subcommittee members have read the documents submitted by the parties in advance of this hearing. Any document that anyone has brought with them today may only be submitted to us if all the other parties to this hearing agree, as required by the hearings regulation. Anyone wishing to introduce further documentary evidence should make that request immediately before they begin to address the subcommittee. The maximum time for any party to address us, including their witnesses, will be 10 minutes. When addressing us, you should not raise any new issue covered in the representations you have already lodged with the council, nor should you raise issues which are not relevant to the promotion of the licensing objectives at issue in this hearing, which are the prevention of crime and disorder, public safety, and the prevention of public nuisance. Written representations have been received from interested parties, and they appear to relate principally to one of the four licensing objectives, which namely is public safety, unsafe number of members attending at the venue, health and safety issues created by blocking access to the public access to the Ham, and alternative routes which are narrow and dangerous. When it comes to a point of having a discussion where I think it helpful, I may choose to lead a discussion, as that may be the most effective way of identifying key concerns and possible solutions. I wish to avoid formal cross-examination. I will allow questions at appropriate points. The subcommittee's legal advisor will briefly go through the procedure for today's hearing. That's Mr. Giles Salter. Giles.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everyone. So the procedure takes place in 3 sections. The first section being that the licensing officer, Mrs. Westlake, will summarise her report and update the committee on any changes to the report as published. There then may be questions from members, followed by any questions from the applicant and questions from the interested parties. That's the first part. The second part then will be the applicants who make their case, which of course, I remind everyone, it's 10 minutes. And following that, there may be questions from the members and questions from the interested parties. Once that is concluded, we move to the third section, which is the interested parties making their case. And there may be questions from members and questions from the applicant. Following that, the chairman may wish to have a round table discussion. And once the chair is happy that the meeting has reached a conclusion by which they can meet a decision, the committee will retire into their private Zoom meeting. The decision on the license application will be made today, and all parties will be notified within 5 working days of the end of today's meeting. So I will write that up immediately after this meeting and will be put in the post to you. I don't think I have anything else to say at this time, Chair, unless you have any questions for me, but I'll hand back to you to move the meeting forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Giles. Anybody any questions before we move on? No. Okay, so right now, the next stage is to hear from our licensing officer, Mrs. Westlake, who will present a summary of the report and update on any changes to the report as published. Mrs. Westlake.
Thank you, Chair. Good morning, everybody. Right, today's subcommittee is asked to consider an application by Sidmouth Jazz and Blues Festival Limited for the grant of a new time-limited premises licence at the Ham Recreation Ground and adjoining car park in Sidmouth. The application is to provide licensable activities at the Ham for an event to be known as the Sidmouth Jazz and Blues Festival. And the applicant requests that the premises licence commence on Wednesday, the 1st of June 2022 and be valid for a time-limited period ending on Sunday, the 5th of June 2022. The following licensable activities and timings are proposed: the performance of live music, the playing of recorded music, and the provision of anything similar to live music, recorded music, or performance of dance, indoors and outdoors. So it's Wednesday to Saturday, 11 AM to 11 PM, and Sunday, 11 AM to 10 PM. The sale of alcohol for consumption on the premises only, Wednesday to Saturday, 12 midday to 10:45 PM, and then Sunday 12 midday to 10 PM. And the premises opening hours have been given as Wednesday to Sunday 11 AM to 11 PM. The area proposed for licensable activities is outlined in red on the plan that was submitted with the application, and this can be viewed at Appendix B. This includes both the Ham Recreation Ground itself and also the adjoining car park immediately in front of Sidmouth Swimming Pool. The car park to the rear of the swimming pool is also proposed for use as an event production zone, but not to be included within the licensable area. The application form itself is set out at Appendix A, and the conditions that have been offered by the applicant are set out separately at Appendix C. This is because the conditions were set out both in the application form itself and also in a separate accompanying document. So they've been combined together at Appendix C for ease of reference for everybody. 3 representations have been received in relation to this application, and they are set out at Appendix F. I don't propose to go into those in detail because they're in the report for everybody to read, but it includes 2 objections from local residents and 1 positive representation from Sidmouth Town Council. No representations have been received from any of the responsible authorities. When responding to the notice of hearing, both of the objectors have made further key points, and these are set out at Appendix G. These key points must be considered by the committee in conjunction with their original representations. The applicant has also given their key points when they've responded to the notice of hearing, and again, those can be read at Appendix G. All further details of the application are contained within the body of the report, and there have been no updates or amendments since publication. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mrs. Westlake. Right, first of all, any questions from members of the subcommittee? Anyone got a question on the application as presented? No, I don't have one. It's quite clear to me. Any questions from the applicant?
No questions.
Thank you. Any questions from the interested parties?
Yes, I do, please, Councillor Dent. Could Ms. Westlake please set out the setup, the date for and days for the setup time for the proposed festival, and then also the dates for the taking down of the festival as well, please?
Would that be Mrs. Westlake or Mr. Radford?
I think Miss Westlake at this point in time, as the licensing committee are putting forward this application on their behalf, so to ensure that the licensing department are clear about the full length of time or full expanse of time that is proposed for the close down.
Okay, thank you. Understood the question.
Yeah.
Mrs. Westlake?
Sure. Thank you very much for the question. What I would say is that the license itself is relating to the licensable activities and the timings when those will be taking place. Because the setup and takedown is not actually part of that, I think really it is more appropriate for the applicant to advise on that. What I have been told by our department who deal with the hiring of the land is that the organisers have been given access to the car park between the 29th of May and the 6th of June. So I presume it's a day either side for the setup and takedown, but I'll let the applicant answer that one himself. Thank you.
Right. Applicant, would you care to comment on that, please?
Yeah, sorry, obviously it does fall outside of the licensing process.
Yes.
So I'm not sure that the build schedule and the DRIG schedule is pertinent to the licensing criteria. However, obviously it does fall within the safety advisory group process for safe planning of events, and that will be considered as part of that engagement with the statutory bodies. At the moment, though, we are expecting approximately a 4 to 5 day build and a 2 to 3 day DRIG. But at the moment, because obviously the exact specifications of the staging, seating, etc., are still to be finalised, that is a very early days, but that would fall within the safety advisory group planning group.
Right, thank you. Understood, and you're quite right. It's not necessarily part of the hearing that we're going through, the licensing hearing this morning.
Okay, right. If I could add, Chair, just to that, the one supportive interested party from the town clerk states very clearly that from 25th of May to the 9th of June, the land is required for that. So that makes a 14-day period where the proposals for the cutting off of the proposed sort of area is had. So I do think that in the broader that nothing happens in a vacuum, and I do think that's pertinent sort of information.
It's useful information for us. Thank you, and noted. Okay, now we move on to the applicant's case, for which they have 10 minutes to speak. I didn't say that. If I didn't say that clearly beforehand, I apologise. Everybody who does speak has up to 10 minutes only to speak, and if they go on for that length of time will be given a 30-second warning just before the end. So this is time for the applicant's case. Would you like to speak?
Okay, many thanks. I'll go first for a few minutes, and then I'll invite Mr. Ian Bowden, the promoter, to make a short statement as well. From my perspective, I'm the event production manager, and I'm also the agent in regards to putting the application in. When we put the initial application in, there was a degree of feedback which we took on board. We withdrew the initial application following that feedback, and amended the application in light of public feedback and local parish council feedback to come in with the revised application that is currently being discussed today. From our point of view, obviously the significant areas of concern within the representation centre around the issue of public safety. And therefore, I'll just reiterate in regards to the statement of facts that we've already presented, that as part of the event planning, the promoter is and will continue to engage with the local safety advisory group in East Devon District Council to ensure that the event is well planned and safe. This involves many statutory bodies, including highways, environmental health, police, ambulance, fire, etc., in order to provide a safe event for all. That includes both those within the event, but those that are potentially affected by the actions, omissions, or inactions of the event itself. The promoter and his team have and will continue to engage with all relevant statutory bodies to ensure that the health, safety and well-being of both attendees and those potentially affected by the event are understood and managed at all times. This will be again through both the safety advisory group process and relevant documentation required for an event such as this. These include, but not limited to, the following: event safety and management plans, event risk assessments, event fire and evacuation plans, and supporting appendices for the above documents. These will be written by competent and qualified members of staff, including myself, who have over 20 years of experience within the safety planning for events industry. The event will attract a maximum of circa 2,000 and is inside a controlled space. The controlled space is required to ensure the safety and well-being of those inside, as well as provide control of capacity under the licensing requirements. During the build and break phase of the event, a sterile area is required to ensure the safety of those on site and those potentially affected by their works. This sits within CDM regulations as amended in 2015 that now include the event world or the event industry. The event is a managed open-air concert of 2,000 within an area of 2,400 square metres approximately. This excludes toilets, welfare, bars, and is therefore well within the safe operating space required for an event of this nature, as recommended via the Health and Safety Executive Purple Guide and other guidance notes regarding evacuation, fire, and general site safety for events such as this. Therefore, from our perspective, the planning, although the licensing is one element of the safe planning, it continues as an ongoing process along right up to the dates of the event itself. We will continue to take learning from the statutory bodies and ensure that all the areas of public safety are dealt with and managed in a suitable and effective manner. If I can ask Ian Bowden, as the promoter, to give an overview of the event itself and the benefits. Ian?
Hi, good morning, everybody. Thank you, John. Yes, it's great to be with you. And obviously, I just wanted to give a bit more of an overview about the festival. Since October last year, we've come down and with my team, and we've met with many businesses, made contacts with the Sidmouth Town Council, East Devon District Council, and the overriding feedback that we've had is that it's a very, very positive thing for the town, for the region, in terms of tourism, economic benefit and cultural development. So it's a very positive thing to add to the additional events calendar, not only in Sidmouth, but also in East Devon. So the feedback we've had has been absolutely wonderful, and everyone's been so engaging. It is a very exciting project. It does take many months of planning. And we're obviously very mindful that we want everyone to benefit from the event itself. So in terms of the HAM, it is our major concert event site. It's beautifully located, and And we have a very, very professional, highly qualified professional team putting all of that together. And John and his colleagues have done, in my view, a very, very good job helping us with all the applications and putting all the plans in place. So there are other things that we wish to obviously bring to the festival, lots of free music to create a lovely, positive atmosphere around the town, engage with hotels, hoteliers, accommodation providers, and really bring the streets alive in a controlled, sensible manner. Our festival isn't going to be as big as the Sidmouth Folk Festival, and we've obviously engaged with them, and they've been very supportive of our plans and helped give us guidance over the months, and I've got the greatest respect for what they do. So we're building this gradually. It's a 5-year plan, and we need to establish the festival on an ongoing basis. So, and we're very excited about what we're bringing to Sidmouth. I could go on about lots of other aspects, but we're thinking about a food and drink festival to bring another dimension to the festival, which will be free. A community program where we can engage and profile regional and local music talent. Again, that will be subsidised by various different funding avenues like the Arts Council, etc. So it really is a very exciting project. And again, just to summarise, we want everyone to benefit from it.
Thank you very much, Mr. Bowden. Okay, so next thing, questions. First of all, questions from members. Have we got any questions, members? Maddie.
Yes, I have got a question.
Thank you.
On the timing, starting at 11 o'clock, finishing at 11 p.m. Is that the timing for the music or the sale of alcohol and foods? Is it all at the same time, or bearing in mind that if you finish at 11 o'clock with the music and people are still drinking, then obviously they're not going to leave the site till nearly midnight. When we need to bear this in mind and know exactly what your intentions are. If you could
Chairman,
be so good.
Chair, can I just jump in there and point Councillor Chapman to page 9 of the report, which clearly sets out the timings for every licensable activity and the timings for the event itself, which is between 11 o'clock and 11 o'clock in the morning and 11 o'clock at night. And I think probably the thing to do there is for the event organisers to focus on actually the sort of people leaving the events at 11 o'clock, how they are going to deal with that specific aspect.
Yeah, that's basically what I was getting at.
Sorry, it's John Radford. Sorry, can you just clarify what you're asking? So are you asking about the sale of alcohol, or are you talking about the safe egress and ingress of the public for the event space?
Yes, if we are saying here, finish at 11 o'clock, is that the time that you expect the public to leave, or is that the time you finish selling alcohol, or is that the time you finish music?
So the alcohol licensing hours are within the application.
Yes.
So they are not till 2300 hours. They have to finish in line with police guidance. They finish 15 minutes before the licensable hours finish.
Yes.
And that's statuted by Devon and Cornwall Police Service.
Yes.
In regards to the egress of the public, then the license continues until 2300. The event finishes at 2300. The expectation is that the hours of the actual concert would be approximately 22:30 to 22:45, and allowing a safe egress within the confines of the event license. However, obviously, because alcohol is not being sold, the egress will take place in a safe manner. So if it overruns, it's not a breach of the license, because it's effectively outside of the licensing process in terms of the event space.
Okay, right. Thank you.
Does that make sense? Sorry.
Yeah, it does. In other words, both activities will cease before the 11 o'clock and not on the 11 o'clock.
So the hours of the license.
Yeah,
and this is
I
a-
know what you're
so-
saying.
Yeah.
I'm just trying to be aware of how you are seeing the license and how you
Okay. Yeah,
are going
I
to
know.
work within the license, if you like.
I'm with you. So there is no intention of finishing dead on 2,300 hours and pushing people out within effectively a very short time frame straight out. That is not the intention. The intention is to have a close of music approximately 22:30 to 22:45 to allow us safe managed egress beyond, up to, and we'd want to look for a relative site clearance by 2,300.
Excellent, thank you.
Good, thank you, Maddie. And Tony, you got a hand up.
Yeah, thank you. A question for Mr. Radford, I think, that about capacity and numbers. Just if you could help me understand a bit better, because I've just heard that Mr. Bowden saying it's not as big as the folk festival, and I think there was a figure of 1,000 for that, and yet the capacity on this is 2,000 or 2,700, depending where you read it. So that's the first question on numbers. If you could just clarify whether it is bigger than the folk festival or smaller.
I think what Mr. Bowden was appertaining to was the overall size of the event in its holistic framework. So, for example, the folk festival has a campsite and multiple venues. This has 3 venues and smaller sort of fringe elements, but it doesn't have a dedicated campsite, and therefore the overall numbers as a festival would be less. In terms of the specific venue, again, I'm not sure where the data coming, which was 1,000 is the capacity of the folk festival. With it, I have a fairly good awareness of the folk festival capacities, and the Ham at the moment has a capacity of the venue of just below 1,200. And in regards to additional supporting elements within the same area, i.e. the Ham recreation field, there is the element of seating up to, so the folk festival within that site currently has potentially 1,600 plus people within that environment already. So there is not the gap between this, bearing in mind it's an all-seated audience, and the reference to the Sidmouth Folk Festival is I think slightly spurious in terms of the quantities of people that are expected on the site at any one time.
All right. Okay. Thank you. Yes, and having been to the folk festival, that's certainly the whole town has taken over, as well as I can remember. On the second question about again about capacity, but the Sidmouth Town Council asked for a risk assessment to be done on the diversion of the footpath closure with regard to sort of numbers. And has that risk assessment been done about what the effective capacity is on the diversion of footpaths?
So the risk assessment will be will need to comprise a number of elements, and they will need to be taking into consideration feedback from certain statutory bodies. So they have not been completed yet. We would need to engage through the safety advisory group process with the fire, police and ambulance to ensure, obviously, we require the use of what we refer to as blue routes through the town. They need to be maintained, and additionally on nearby residential properties we need to maintain the access for blue light emergency services to those. That's part of one risk assessment. In regards to the pedestrian element and the walking routes, that's another part of the risk assessment to do with the fire evacuation plan, because obviously what we need to also understand is that if there was an incident in either a nearby property or business or the event itself, the impact of that on the overall event, and therefore the risk assessment process needs to be considered holistically with feed-in from those statutory bodies to understand what their requirements are as well. So they have not been carried out yet, due to the fact that we haven't got an event yet, because we need to go through the licensing process first.
Right, thank you. That's very helpful. Just to clarify then, as I understand it, the safety and the risk assessment will be done much 2022, we will probably see a report next year, I imagine. Is that the case?
Yeah, so the Safety Advisory Group sits regularly within EDDC, and we are called to those meetings in order to present to the statutory bodies.
Right.
And within that framework as well, we also are required on a per statutory body basis to engage with the relevant authorities. So, for example, for public order, etc., it would be the police that we'd have an offline conversation that would be fed into what was referred to as the event safety management plan and the event risk assessments to ensure that they were covered off, and they would effectively approve the quality of that information, and that it was fit for purpose and met their requirements in the same way that highways, environmental health, etc., would also feed into that planning process.
Okay, just to follow up then on, just for clarity from my mind, at the beginning of the officer's report, it refers to the statutory bodies and it says no representations have been received from most of them. Does that mean that the comments are yet to come? It doesn't mean that they're happy with everything that's been done to date.
What it means is within the licensing framework, there are no feedback from them, or there's no representations from them. That does not mean that that's the end of the discussion. They are, in terms of good planning, they are ongoing and continuous in regards to the engagement with those bodies. So, but they are merely referring to the specifics of the licensing application aspect of it.
Right. Okay. Thank you very much. That's very clear.
Thank you. And Maddie, do you want to say something else?
Yes, please, Chair. Could I ask, please, about the Portaloos? And I know where you're citing them, but as it is a very delicate site, they will obviously need emptying, etc. Have you booked, or will you be booking to get these done regularly? Because it is a delicate site, it's not like the festival site. We cannot have a situation which we did have in Exmouth, where the Portaloos, they didn't come and empty them. And so we had a dire situation on our hands. Are you aware of this sort of situation? And can you promise us that all avenues will be covered on this, please?
So regarding toilets, I'm not quite sure which element of the licensing application you're referring to the toilets under. Could you clarify that for us?
I am just worried with the site that you have got Portaloos on the site and granting a license to allow members of the public in, and you're giving them facilities. We have to make sure that these facilities are maintained under the environmental health part of our licensing. Thank you.
Yeah, no, I understand. So under the environmental health, yes. So the toilets are, the quantity of toilets are as indicated within the purple guide issued by the HSE. So there is a quantity of toilets that are recommended for an event, effectively depending on the size of the event, depends on how many toilets you have. But yeah, there are specified event toilets that are being procured for this event. They are indicated indicatively within the on the site plan. The exact quantities, again, that will sit within the feedback from Safety Advisory Group. But yeah, they will be from a professional company. They will be for the attendees only, so we're not impacting on the public facilities, and they will be managed and maintained in accordance with best practice.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now we move on to questions from interested parties. The interested party, Mr. Pemberton, have you any questions at this point relating to the licensing application? Questions to the applicant?
Yeah, no? I do. Sorry, yes, I do, and some different sort of calculations or different information to give as well, if I may. First of all, in terms of capacity numbers, the capacity for the proposed festival is of 2,000 people seated within the grassed area of the Ham, so within the red area that's set. And then, as Councillor Woodward had said, 2,750 we're now being told for the actual enclosed red area itself. That's a stark difference to the folk festival. Within the marquee of the folk festival, the large marquee, our calculations are that it's 1,059, but it's not more than 1,100 seated capacity within the folk festival. Those two figures, therefore, are vastly different within themselves. The other factor in terms of the proposed festival as well is that there are 3 sites, so the Ham, Blackmore Gardens and Connaught Gardens, and so therefore the figures that I've given just now, the 2,750 off for the Ham, don't include, and therefore don't also include any additional capacity numbers that will be taking place at Blackmore Gardens or at Connaught Gardens. So for information and clarity for the panel in terms of capacity, and then there are of course consequences for those numbers. What I'd
can I just jump in there, please, as the legal advisor? Thank you. Thank you. Just to say, of course, that you are only here to consider the issues of capacity in relation to the licensable activities on this site.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you very much, Mr. Salter, for that. What I was also doing, which the other members may well have picked up as well, is that Mr. Radford, in terms of replying to Councillor Chapman's, Councillor Woodward's inquiry, was in terms of making comparative figures. The comparative figures are more clearly expressed, as I have just said, rather than attempting to sort of equate in greater form the numbers that will be for the proposed festival in comparison with the folk festival. So I think my figures give a greater clarity and comparison in terms of what's taking place. Second point I'd like to make, and maybe if I make it as a statement, and then we
Mr. Pemberton, Mr. Pemberton, sorry, Mr. Pemberton, you're going to have your chance in a minute to actually make your full statement.
Yeah.
This is about questions on anything that the applicants have made to the committee. So it's either it's asking a question, please, because we want to keep it concise and clear. Thank you very much.
I'm very happy to keep it precise and clear, which was why I was going to do it the other way. Can I ask then, therefore, in terms of the event safety management plan, has one been completed for this application panel today?
An ESMP is not a requirement under the Licensing Act.
And so therefore, I think that's very important information that the panel need to be had, because that involves statutory bodies and other views that are very pertinent to the overall plan made. The second question then is, has a risk assessment been made for the application panel today?
A risk assessment is not part of the licensing application.
Okay, and so my point would be that things don't happen in a vacuum, and a risk assessment for the event itself isn't very important and pertinent sort of question that needs to be asked. If I can then also sort of say that all this information, if it's not prepared for the panel today, leaves and this is a question, would in my mind leave the panel in a very difficult position of not having all the information that it would require in being able to make a determination today in terms of the application. So that's a question in a slightly unworded way.
So in answer to that, as a licensing condition that is normally applied to an event of this ilk, the licensing conditions would include from the police and the licensing authority that a suitable, sufficient ESMP and risk assessment would be provided to the local authority and statutory bodies no less than either 28 days or 6 weeks before the event start date. And that would be a normal licensing condition that is applied to this or similar events. And that is what happens with other licensable events within East Devon District Council, as well as other district councils within the United Kingdom and under the Licensing Act.
So the point I would sort of make there in terms of the question would be that therefore this is all vital, pertinent information in terms of the safety of the event being able to take place, which isn't before the panel today, for the panel to be able to decide and question and criticise or add to any of its points. So that's where I'll leave that question there. Thank you. Okay, maybe that's okay, Councillor Dent, for the second. Thank you.
Right, thank you very much. Now, I think it's the moment, if we haven't heard already, Mr. Pemberton, for you as an interested party to make your case. And again, now you have a maximum of 10 minutes.
Lovely. Thanks very much, Councillor Dent. Sarah, if I might ask that if you tell me 2 minutes before, so 8 minutes, to give me that sort of warning, although I don't propose to go on too much longer than we can. Sarah, is that okay?
Yes, that's fine. My colleague will do that. Thank you.
Okay, that'd be great. Thank you. Before I start, though, can I? I'm speaking on behalf of myself and Garland Pickard. There are other people around as well, and I think with just 2 objections formally placed before the committee, I wouldn't want people to think at all that that's the extent of the disquiet in relation to not only previously the extended 2:30 in the morning sort of closure time, but in terms of these arrangements as well. Can I also ask as well, who is it that provides legal advice to Sidmouth Town Council? Maybe Mr. Salter can answer that.
Well, if Sidmouth Town Council require legal advice, then they can buy in legal advice from their own appointed solicitor if they so choose. But we don't provide legal advice to Sidmouth Town Council, apart from on process and procedure on conducting council meetings. But we wouldn't actually give them specific legal advice on licensing. They can purchase that in themselves.
Okay, but for process and procedure, the legal department at East Devon District Council can provide that information to Sidmouth Town Council. Is that correct?
If it is requested.
If it is requested. Okay, that's one point. For the East Devon District Council licensing department, just asking the question, who provides the legal advice for that, please? And maybe Mr. Salter might want to answer that question.
I do. Or at least the legal, well, so say legal services within the council has its own legal services team, and there is some licensing expertise within that.
Lovely, thank you. Yep, so I'm just wanting to highlight those 2 factors at this point in time. Can I also check that all the councillors on the licensing committee received my full objection as has been in front of the panel? I asked and had assurance that all the members of the licensing EDC councillors had a copy of it. So however many of you are there, that was 22 or so, I think.
Thank you for that. And I think you had a reply from Councillor Joe Whibley on that, which said that your comments have gone through to the licensing department and they will and have been included in the reports that we have received.
Lovely, thank you, Councillor Dent. Yeah, so therefore all the licensing councillors had received that. Thank you. If I can just clarify also that this is only an application for next year at this point in time, and not for the 5 years that had originally been spoken about.
Each application goes in once, and if it comes back, if they have another year, they'll have to be a separate application.
Lovely, thank you very much for that as well. And before that, can I just say that sort of being notified of the papers for this committee panel meeting less than 2 days before the event, where there are 85, I think, papers to be read and time provided for all of that, is, I'm sure, something that I'd expect the licensing department to look at again in terms of being able to support community involvement and the right to object. That's been very, very limiting. If I then start, thank you. If I then start, there should not be a need for this objection to be made. The Sidmouth Town Council, Town Clerk and Chairman have, in an ill-conceived way, forced this matter through, telling the organiser that the Town Council would get this through with no difficulty. There's an element there of the organiser being misled over this process. They also told locals that it was agreed, done and dusted by a full council meeting by all councillors when this was not the case. And when details were not fully known to the local councillors at all. And equally, at 2 council meetings, Sidmouth Town Council councillors were not allowed to discuss the application fully, and in fact were prevented from speaking at the last meeting about 4 or 5 weeks ago to discuss any access issues in relation to the site at all. The plans agreed by the town clerk and the chairman are unsafe, ill-conceived and inconsiderate towards Sidmouth Town folk. Sidmouth Town Council are responsible for agreeing the use of the ham. They're the ham trustees, they agree the use of the ham. And then as EDC, Sidmouth Town councillors have said, Sidmouth Town Council therefore are responsible not only for what takes place, but for agreeing the details and how things are conducted, and how they are run during the event, and the need to monitor and to report back following the event, and to seriously and critically look at the contract and the specifications set out in that regard. Sidmouth Town Council, Town Clerk and the Chairman are fully aware of this. This also is part of the scrutiny and challenge role of Sidmouth Town Council councillors, who also have accountability for the events agreed, how they're conducted and any subsequent agreements. This EDC licensing committee, this panel, yourselves, need to be fully aware that that Sidmouth Town Council have not and do not take full responsibility or accountability for its actions, and are placing full accountability and responsibility on this panel and licensing committee members for decisions that Sidmouth Town Council have already previously agreed with the organiser. And the Sidmouth Town Council will be fully aware of the arrangements that they would have allowed and agreed with the organiser themselves. I'll note just for the moment some of the things I put in the objection, and I hope and part of this would be to enable people to hear matters again and hopefully hear them afresh should that be necessary. So this objection is a full objection and links to all the licensing objectives and specifically to public safety. The previous issues of timings, emergency access, which were previously sort of withdrawn by the organiser, by Sidmouth Town Council. I'm not fully satisfied that they've been fully and properly dealt with. Nevertheless, in this application, and in summary, there are concerns about the health and safety issues created by denied access to the ham path and cycleway for the public to and from the seafront and town. Now, the pathway, just for those that don't know, and I hope everyone's been along and clearly seen what it is a
You
number
have
of
2
times.
minutes remaining.
2 minutes remaining.
Sorry?
So 2 minutes remaining.
Oh, lovely. Thank you very much. Okay, but so there are real concerns in terms of denied access there. There are health and safety issues for the diversion over the unsafe, unsuitable small bridge, and safety issues of the pedestrians and all traffic being funneled through the congested access through York Street and Mill Street for pedestrians, cars, vans, those with mobility and disability issues. Health and safety issues exist in terms of the application attempting to prevent those viewing the festival from the New Alma Bridge and the zigzag path, and excessive unsafe numbers of 2,000, we're now hearing 2,750 attending and diverted in and around this area. The consequences of these matters also impact on the other application and the other headings, objectives that are made. The town council, town clerk and the town chairman, this is ill-conceived, forced through on their behalf. I put matters in the objections where the EDC licensing committee have shown themselves or raised questions about how helpful, how neutral they have been in this
30
process.
seconds remaining.
Thank you, Sarah. And I'll remind people of that in the, or Althea, and I'll remind people of that. There are all these broader matters. What is required is for this panel to ensure that the matter goes back to Sidmouth Town Council and the organiser, and a full contract agreement with full clear specifications, not only for events in the red area, but outside the red area as well. Let's not have some bureaucratic thing about lots of old ladies falling down over the bridge outside the red area. And those are matters, I think, that are in the objection and very pertinent. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. Pemberton. Time's up. Thank you for that. All right, first of all, questions from members to Mr. Pemberton. Anybody got a question for Mr. Pemberton relevant to the 4 licensing pillars that we work by? We've heard about Mr. Pemberton's concerns about public safety. We've heard about his concerns over health and safety. Anybody got any questions about his particular ones? Tony?
Yes, thank you, Mr. Pemberton. Referring to your the written objections, you mentioned that viewing the festival from the New Alma Bridge would be the health and safety issue. Could you enlighten me on how that would be a health and safety issue if they can't see the festival from the bridge?
Yes, it's the event will be being taken place down below in the Ham. The bridge and the zigzag path is quite an extensive place. I understand that hoardings will be put up to prevent sort of viewing from that. I think one can only see certainly more than a handful of people at all particular points in time wanting to try to look through, look over, look beside of all of that. That wouldn't sound to me to be a safe safety matter to deal with in that way.
Okay, thank you. You also mentioned that the diversion over the unsafe, unsuitable and small bridge. Why do you think it's unsafe?
I think the first answer to that, Councillor Woodward, is that people only need to sort of go to it, walk up, walk over it, see the height, see the slope, see the unsavoury state, if that's a way of putting it, that the actual sort of pavement of the bridge is, to recognise the volume of people that will will be diverted over it, which is the plan for the proposed festival, and also of the people that use the ham path. So many elderly, many disabled, many frail, many people in the motorised sort of wheelchair things, many parents with prams, let alone others with bikes and more healthy sort of bodied people to going to it. That will cause some real consternation and some real concern, and certainly there are views around about I hope Sidmouth Town Council and the organisers got sufficient insurance to cover any accidents that will just be clearly waiting to happen.
And you've also mentioned that if there's a denied access to the ham path, that would be a health and safety issue. Could you enlighten me how that would be a health and safety if somebody just can't go somewhere, why that would be a health and safety issue?
Yeah, what it will be doing was be preventing the hundreds of people during each day, during the 14 days that this that is proposed by the plan. It will be preventing them from the usual route from Sidford, from down the Buys, from all the people in the town that come that side down the Buys, walking through to both the town for shopping as well as the Esplanade. Instead of being able to go down the ham path and ham cycleway, we'll funnel them both over the bridge and then maybe to your next question, down York Street and Mill Street by the Swan, and through that way there. Where in fact there's only a footpath enough for one single person walking to be able to go down. It will funnel sort of everyone those ways rather than the main routes that people take, which has never in the past been closed in living memory, down through the ham path and ham cycleway. Also, if there are 2,750 people attending the event. And of course, this won't just be one event, one lot of 2,000 or 2,750 people, you know, between 11 in the morning and 12 and then 11 at sort of night. There are going to be 2, there are going to be 3, aren't there? Lots of maybe 2,000 to 2,750 people in addition to the normal traffic that goes through the routes that we're just talking about. It's ill-conceived, it's ill thought about, and then the chairman of Sidmouth Town Council was seen looking at the little bridge after one of the council meetings where he'd been preventing any of this Sidmouth Town councillors asking any questions about access issues at all, following the body of the objection that you have in front of you today.
Yeah, thank you. That's good.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Anybody, Mary, question?
Yes. Can I ask, we're talking about the footpath here. Late at night, as I don't know it, is it lit?
It's not lit. There is no lighting there. And just there is no sort of lighting there for walking along. It's dark. I'm not particularly happy walking down that way myself alone late at night as well. But no, it's not lit. It would be dangerous for those that are not of sound foot. Would be my opinion.
And that includes the small bridge as well.
Oh, sorry. I thought you were talking about the small. Oh, sorry, the small bridge.
Yeah.
That there is a light at the top of the small bridge, sort of that sort of waist type height, maybe chest type height, maybe. And there are lights on the old boat park there that light the old boat park. So this is where the ornamental gardens, that's not the right phrase for it, and beyond the children's playgrounds, they should go off at an earlier time, but they certainly are not light sufficient enough to enable anyone to be walking along or by any pathway or bridgeway.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. I have no further questions, but this is the moment to say to the applicant, have you any questions for Mr. Pemberton?
Yeah, just a couple of quick questions. Could Mr. Pemberton inform us as to what communications he's previously undertaken with the relevant authorities regarding his concerns reference the footpath and the roadway, which he clearly states are unsafe.
If I could just clarify, I'm being asked as my technical sort of knowledge and experience in terms of footpaths and small bridges.
No, you're saying that the footpath and the road and pavements are unsafe for pedestrians in your statement, in your representation. Obviously, I'd just like to understand, previously to this licensing application, what information or what request have you put in as a member of the public concerned about the rights of access around the area regarding the unsafe, if that's how you perceive it, the unsafe nature of the footpaths?
If I've understood you properly, you come back and tell me if I haven't. There's not been a need to. The Ham Path and Cycleway has never been closed in living memory. And that is the main route that people take for the reasons that I've set out.
So at the moment, with your understanding, nobody uses the Riverside Walk or the pavement in York Street at the moment. Nobody uses that. All pedestrians currently use the path through the Ham.
My answer to that would be the vast majority of people do, yes, because they know the precise concerns that I've set out. But no, certainly, there are times when I walk down there are other people. You have to be, so what I would say to that is that you have to be single file, or if you walk in the road, you have to be very clear there's no car coming up in front or behind you, otherwise you'd have to move on to the footpath. You have to be able-bodied. So that's down York Street and Mill Street. Few people, I would say, actually walk over the small bridge and down the red brick path, so the Riverside Path that we're talking about. Few people do, of course. Yeah, but anyone in the other circumstances that I've been setting out use the Ham Path and use the Ham Cycleway.
Okay, and final question from myself is the data regarding the numbers on Folk Festival and the fact that in your belief it has never been closed before that route. Could you just clarify where the information comes from? I need to declare that I am the event production director for Sidmouth Folk Festival as well, and therefore I do have significant amount of information regarding both those statements. So I just want to understand where you've gathered that information from.
Sorry, Mr. Rafford, just to make sure I understand, is this in terms of the use of the Ham Path Cycleway or in terms of numbers and capacity of the event?
Both statements you made. I just, from my perspective, I just wondered where that information came from, because it is, to my mind and to my knowledge, inaccurate.
In terms, two things then. In terms of the Ham Cycleway and Ham Pathway, local residents that have lived here for 60 or 70 sort of years is where that information comes from. And then just to note as well, then, as you would know, when the Sidmouth Folk Festival is up and being up running for its 8 days, for the week or so that's set up beforehand, for the 4 days that it takes to take down afterwards. The Ham Cycleway Path and Cycleway is not closed except for periods of getting things on and off of the actual grass part of the Ham, and then that's monitored in a safe way by the guys, people who are doing it. So that's a complete difference in terms of the proposed festival here. In terms of the numbers capacity, well, it's on the diagram sheet that is presented by the applicant. There's clearly 2,000 seated people are noted there, or then again, we've heard 2,750 in some sort of way, maybe other people standing as well. For the Folk Festival, when we look at the folk festival capacity numbers within, as I said before, the large marquee that takes up the vast amount of the grass space on the Ham. Those figures are 1,000 and I think it's 59. It's not more than 1,100.
Okay, thanks. Chair, could I just clarify a couple of points? They aren't questions though, they are clarifications.
Thank you. Go ahead.
It was just to clarify that in the past, having, as I say, having been the event production director for Sidmouth Folk Festival since 2006, and previous to that, having lived in the town since I was 3 years old, I'm aware of the previous usage quite extensively, and the walkway, contrary to the statement that is made by Mr. Pemberton, the walkway has been closed for periods of time before. Admittedly, not whole days, but significant periods of time, including 2 to 3 hours, to ensure the safe installation and safe egress of equipment and facilities. And the other thing is, just to clarify, the capacity for the seated concerts is 2,000 on the Ham. I'm not quite sure where the 2,750 figure has come from. It is not 2,750. It is 2,000 seated. And just to clarify again, the folk festival, the venue, approximately indeed 1,100. We, as I've already said, we put another 450 odd on the other end of it in a seated format on picnic benches with the bar and catering. So it's I would say it's inaccurate to say that never before has over 1,000 people been on that site. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you very much.
Councillor Dent, if I can respond to that. Yes?
Yes.
Yes, thank you. Thank you. A major difference here is that when the fair comes, when other things come, then there is when other works have taken place. When the Alma Bridge was being built, of course, there have been times when the Ham Path and Cycleways needed to be closed off for short periods of time whilst equipment's got on and off. And that isn't an issue. What we have here is there's a 14-day period where the whole of the Ham and the path and cycleway will be cut off for the exclusive use of the proposed festival, with the ill-conceived, unsafe arrangements being forced on the rest of the public in the way that I previously set out. And capacity numbers, the 2,700 came up yesterday, late last night, whilst I was reading the late received sort of papers, which were in the applicant's application.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you.
Let's move on now. This is the opportunity for the applicant to make his final statement. So either Mr. Radford or Mr. Bowden, please.
So I'd just like to reiterate my earlier points that a lot of the documentation is still required under the licensing conditions that we expect. We will obviously be fulfilling an event safety and management plan, the event risk assessments, but they need to be undertaken with the relevant statutory bodies and do not form part of the licensing process, in as much as they are a licensing condition but are not normally delivered as part of the licensing application. So just from our point of view, we will continue to engage with the local authority, the statutory bodies and the public in order to provide a safe and successful event. Ian, do you have any further comment on that?
Only just to say, just to echo what you're saying, John. I mean, safety is of paramount importance to us, and I know that we'll, as a team and working very closely with all the bodies, as you said, and stakeholders, we will make sure that we'll be very, very thorough in everything we do going forward. So just really to just to follow up on what you just said, John.
Right, thank you very much. Members, anybody got any questions before we move on? Okay, that then brings our meeting to an end. And I'd
Oh,
like to,
sorry, Councillor Dent, just for clarification, do I get a chance to summarise as well in the way that the
no,
other parties have?
you've just had your opportunity, and I think you've
Okay,
done
fine.
it very well. Thank you.
Okay, just clarifying. Thank you.
That brings our meeting to an end. I'd like to thank everyone, including any members of the public watching online, for taking part. However, can I just remind all those present that the supporting officer will confirm when the meeting is no longer being recorded or going live. Until then, your comments will be live to the public. And I'll just reiterate what we heard from Giles earlier, that we will privately make our decision based on all the evidence we've heard this morning. And that decision will be issued in writing, and you will receive it within 5 working days. So that brings this